It is impossible to say that the Chernobyl nuclear disaster plant is safe after a totally pointless attack by the Russians, according to one advisor to the Ukrainian presidential office cited by Reuters. Here are the details. The Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency says it is closely monitoring developments at nuclear-related facilities in Ukraine after Russian forces captured the Chernobyl nuclear plant after a fierce battle with Ukrainian National Guards protecting the decommissioned site on Thursday, according to Al Jazeera. Infamously, reactor number 4 at Chernobyl exploded on April 26, 1986. The subsequent fire that demolished the reactor building released large amounts of radiation into the atmosphere. Citing the official website of the site's operator, Reuters explains that nuclear waste management and storage remain ongoing at the site, while New Scientist reported a surge in fission reactions around the destroyed nuclear reactor in May last year. The situation now, according to nuclear scientists who spoke to New Scientist both directly before the attack and after, is that the risk of nuclear material being released from the decaying reactor as a result of the conflict is low, with one researcher who monitors the ongoing emission of neutrons from the reactor explaining that staff at Chernobyl were safe. The entrance of Chernobyl is controlled by Russians. They do not enter inside, he said. Bruno Merk at the University of Liverpool meanwhile concluded, "I think as long as there is not a deliberate attack, the risk is comparably low," though he added, "If it's a deliberate act, you could possibly do it." Closest to the situation itself, Chernobyl scientists who worked on confinement plans at the site told New Scientist on February 22nd that monitoring work would continue and that all safety systems at the plant are working well, but that scientific data processing has been partially suspended. In terms of the wider Russian invasion of Ukraine, NBC News reports that Chernobyl is most likely valuable because of its location, sitting on one of the most direct routes to the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, as Russian troops look to push through the country. Chernobyl also sits as a powerful symbol for the decline of the Soviet Union, with the disaster widely being seen as helping to lead to its ultimate collapse. Russian President Vladimir Putin has described the fall of the Soviet Union as the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the century and is seen as keen to revive Russia's Soviet status on the world stage. Of course, the inherent dangers surrounding nuclear material within a conflict may also be in mind. Evelyn Farkas explains to NBC that even if Putin has no interest in the decommissioned plant itself, Russia would likely want to secure the facility, especially with the potential for a long-term fight with the Ukrainian insurgents if Russia continues to occupy the country. They certainly don't want loose nuclear material floating around, she said. Scientists have recorded a rise in fission reactions around the destroyed nuclear reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, according to New Scientist. The plant is surrounded by a megastructure called Chernobyl New Safe Confinement, and sensors around the structure have registered increased neutron emissions, according to Reuters. Originally, the Unit 4 reactor at the Chernobyl plant experienced a meltdown in April of 1986, after an unexpected drop in power during a safety test, according to Science Alert. Explosions of compressed steam released as a result of the meltdown sent out radioactive material across Europe, helping lead to the premature deaths of what could be tens of thousands of people. The concern now is that an increase in neutron emissions could create an uncontrolled nuclear fission reaction and further explosions. In nuclear fission, a neutron collides with a uranium atom and splits it, releasing energy and additional neutrons. These neutrons then collide with further uranium atoms in a chain reaction, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The increase in neutron emissions may have been caused by changes in rainwater levels since the installation of a new shelter over the site in 2016, according to Reuters, citing scientists at Ukraine's Institute for Safety Problems of Nuclear Power Plants. According to New Scientist, the issue may relate to one chamber, known as subreactor room 305/2 in particular. Room 305/2 is thought to contain large amounts of radioactive material, and the exact amount of rainwater in the room promotes or reduces the likelihood of fission reactions. Large amounts of water, as there may have been previously, slow neutrons down, preventing them from being captured by other nuclei. Meanwhile, if there's no water at all, neutrons can move too quickly to be easily captured. After the installation of the shelter, it is speculated that there may be just the right amount of water to facilitate reactions, which may explain the increased neutron emissions. Neil Hyatt, nuclear materials chemist at the University of Sheffield, sought to play down the risks of an explosion, telling New Scientist, "We're talking about very low rates of fission, so it's not like a fizzing nuclear reactor. Our estimation of fissile material in that room means that we can be fairly confident that you're not going to get such rapid release of nuclear energy that you have an explosion," he said. However, perhaps less reassuringly, he added, "But we don't know for sure." These days, of course, Chernobyl is a veritable hive of activity. Chernobyl gets a new lease on life. Ukraine has just unveiled a solar power plant just 100 meters from Chernobyl's nuclear site, in which a nuclear disaster occurred 30 years ago. According to a Reuters report, the power plant will consist of photovoltaic solar panels to produce energy and will be connected to the power grid. Ukraine plans to diversify its energy sources by using renewable energy such as solar power. About 3,800 panels will be installed and will produce enough energy to power 2,000 apartments. The Chernobyl solar power plant currently has a capacity of 1 megawatt, but there are plans to eventually increase it to 100 megawatts. Chernobyl's nuclear site exploded in 1986 and forced hundreds of thousands of people to evacuate the contaminated area, which resulted in the area being abandoned due to radiation. The U.S. president has warned that Russia could enter Ukraine, but exactly what that means is still unclear. Here are the details. U.S. President Joe Biden predicted in a press conference that Russia will move into Ukraine after amassing 100,000 troops around its borders in recent weeks. According to CNN, however, White House officials were forced to clarify that any incursion would be met with a severe response after Biden suggested a minor incursion could be treated differently to a full invasion. The precise definitions matter because NATO allies are not united on how to respond to Russia, and there are a number of different forms any Russian action could take. Deutsche Welle reported last month, for instance, that a Russian court had acknowledged Russian soldiers are already present in the Donbas region of Ukraine, though the Kremlin denies it, while a press statement by White House spokesperson Jen Psaki suggested aggression short of military action, including cyber attacks and paramilitary tactics, would be treated separately to any Russian military forces moving across the Ukrainian border, which it said would be seen as a renewed invasion. The phrase renewed invasion referred to the fact that Russia seized Crimea 8 years ago and backed the separatist forces who took control of the Donbas region. As of now, according to the New York Times, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Russia wants security guarantees which would block NATO from expanding eastward into its sphere of influence, and, according to President Biden, cited by Reuters, Putin has asked specifically that Ukraine never join NATO and that strategic or nuclear weapons never be stationed on Ukrainian soil. In terms of concrete consequences should Russian troops enter Ukraine, the U.S. president said Russian companies could lose the ability to use the U.S. dollar and said more ambiguously that it's going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine. The BBC reports that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is escalating dangerously as multiple sources are reporting large Russian military movements towards the eastern Ukrainian border and into the Crimea, which Russian forces annexed from Ukraine in March of 2014. Ukrainian intelligence sources told the BBC that the additional Russian forces amount to 16 battalion tactical groups, which would be up to 14,000 soldiers. Ukraine says this means that when you add the forces that were conducting exercises, Russia now has about 40,000 troops on the eastern border and about 40,000 in Crimea. Russia also announced that it had moved a force of 10 artillery boats and landing craft to the Black Sea. Ukraine's armed forces maintain 255,000 troops, making it the third largest force in Europe after Russia and France. Most of the Ukraine's warplanes, helicopters, tanks, and ships were inherited from the Soviet Union, but due to economic issues, many of these outdated war machines are not functional.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.